we as an investor, we are a generalist, sort of sector generalist investor. So we don't focus on any specific industries. And we're on the receiving end. So there are this universe of founders who are producing something every year, and we are there receiving the fruits of their production, so to say, of their imagination and creativity.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Today, I'm being joined by Alexander Konoplyasty, general partner and co-founder of Flashpoint. Alex and his business partner, Michael, set up the investment firm in 2012, having met during their time at Moscow State Institute of International Relations. Alex holds a degree in International Economic Relations and has previously worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, Morgan Stanley, and UBS. He serves as a board member of several companies, including IVI, a Russian streaming service, and Guesty, property management software. Alex Konoplyasty, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders from Flashpoint Venture Capital. How are you?
I'm all good, Michael. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to talk with you about us and also share some insights that might be curious for your listeners.
I'm very, very excited for all of that. I'm excited to hear about your own journey into Flashpoint Venture Capital. I'm especially excited to hear your insights into the prop tech and construction tech space. What is happening around the world, where the innovation is taking place? What have you learned from the investments that you've done? You've been very active in the Israeli ecosystem, talking about some, expanding your investments here. And I'm excited to pick your brain in these next 20 minutes or so, both on your own journey, but also on the VC side. So Alex, perhaps give me a little bit of an overview of what Flashpoint is, and then your decision working with Israel, and then we'll dive into prop tech and construction tech.
Absolutely, Michael. It'll be my pleasure. And feel free to, interrupt me at any point in time if you have any clarifying questions.
I will. Thank you.
My wife thinks I'm a talkative person, so I can.
Wonderful.
Yeah, briefly about myself. So I was born in Kiev 40 years ago, and my life since then was quite international. So together with my parents, I lived in Azerbaijan, in Germany, in Russia, in Ukraine. And then I was lucky to be a scholar of one of the US programs. So I was an exchange student in high school in the States. That's how I learned my English. And that's what got me into one of the top universities in Europe. And basically, after that, I got a job at Morgan Stanley in London, and I've been always doing telecom, media, and technology, firstly as a banker, and now as an investor. Flashpoint was founded in 2012. We launched it together with my friend Michael, who was my roommate in a dormitory. So Michael is Hungarian. So with Michael, we go back, already like 23 years.
Wow.
It's more of a relationship than a friendship. And we started Flashpoint with our own money. So we pledged about $5 million of our own money that we made through our professional careers. We decided not to buy, any Ferraris or expensive real estate. We decided that, everything needs to be invested in the business. Our wives were not as excited about that part, but hopefully it's gonna prove different. We have started investing our own money, and basically today we are about 400 million assets under management.
Wow.
We are a team of about 30 people, and our vision for Flashpoint is that we would like to build a company actually that does asset management across in technology space. And what we mean by that is that we would like to provide various types of capital to founders across their journey as they build large public companies or as they exit. So we not only would like to focus on seed or Series A, we would also like to support these founders along their way. And also, our dream always was to build something international, because we all worked in an international organization. So focusing only on one geography or being very local is not as exciting. And it's not only supporting founders out of a specific country, let's say from Israel, doing something in the US, because then you're still like more Israeli focused, but supporting more international businesses. So that's why we decided to focus on Eastern European founders, including Israel as a broader European part of Europe, and founders who are building international companies. So they're mostly focused on the US, Western Europe, or in other international geographies. So that's the focus of our business. And we do mostly software. That's our main sort of theme. Originally we started from venture capital. So that was our first product. And in venture capital, we get involved basically at the stage where you have already tested your product market fit, and you understand that this is the product that fits certain customer use cases. And then you start to basically scale that. So you need to hire more sales, marketing, R&D. And that's where I think we as an investor, we found, ourselves to be valuable and helpful to the founders, because we're not as much product people to be involved at an earlier stage where you're still, iterating the product, thinking, which way direction to go, thinking about your fit. But we are more about scaling, and scaling requires hiring people. That's the most important thing, I think, especially in some of the geographies. In Israel in particular, I think right now it's a very challenging environment to be hiring top talent, because,
Yes.
Everyone is hiring. A lot of companies are booming. So it's very hard to find people who are fitting you, and then, retaining those people. And secondly, I think it's about fundraising. So if you're growing very fast, you need to be able to raise capital pretty much constantly. And thirdly, I think what is important and where we're focusing is building the company itself, right? So processes, a lot of the companies we get involved with, they have 10 to 20, 30 maybe employees maximum. And then in the years to come, several years to come, they grow from 30 to 300. And we have a case like that. Let's say Guesty in Israel, one of the first companies we supported in Israel. We have led their Series A already like 4 or 5 years ago. So They were, I think, 15, 17 people. They were probably like, 50, 70K MRR. So relatively still small company, but that has grown tremendously. Now they have, several hundred people working in the company. So basically, you need to build this company together, right? You need to think about, efficiency, what works, what doesn't work, how to build the organization. So that's what we're focused on. And that's where I think we as Flashpoint, that's how we see all of this geography sort of united together in a way, because the problems that you need to solve being a Polish founder or a Finnish founder, a Czech founder, Israeli founder is the same. And it's very different from, let's say, Germany, France, UK, in US, where the markets are big and you don't need to go outside your home geography. And solving the same problems for you as an investor, that's something that is, scale in a scalable manner, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time, I think is quite important. That's why we like this geography. We focus on that. And we'd like
now,
to build
besides the geography and the internationalization of what you're talking about here, specifically, you've come to think quite a lot about the prop tech and construction tech space through your investments as well. I don't believe that the thesis of Flashpoint is specifically in those spaces, looking at the other investments as well, but this is something that you've gotten to understand quite well. Tell me a little bit about this, because this is not a space that the average entrepreneur immediately is drawn to.
Absolutely. Michael, thank you for the question. I think maybe just to also mention that we as an investor, we are generalist, sort of sector generalist investors. So we don't focus on any specific industries, and we're on the receiving end. So there are this universe of founders who are producing something every year, and we are there receiving the fruits of their production, so to say, of their imagination and creativity, on one hand. On the other hand, there are certain industries that we like, construction and prop tech is one of them. There are some others that we like as well, including education, health tech. We've done a number of deals in those industries as well. And we go and proactively search and research these industries. So in prop tech, we have done already, like a handful of investments. In Israel, we have done in total 8 deals. We have invested about $30 million, I think, in Israel in the last, let's say, four years. And out of these 8 companies, basically 3 are in prop tech. And we just announced this morning an investment in a company called Trustor. They raised $4.5 million, where we co-led the transaction together with one of the local Israeli funds. So for us, it's an interesting and important sector. The reason why we're focusing on and started focusing on that space is that I think for several reasons. One of them is that in general, property construction has been like a very boring and traditional market where you have large physical assets and very large operators globally, be it hotels or construction companies, business center managers who have been basically managing these physical assets. And I think WeWork, in a way, was one of the pioneers venturing into the space in a big way, because they said, okay, let's reinvent the whole office management. And I think there were a couple of people like that, including Airbnb, for example, as well. So there were several pioneers in the space in general who pushed automation into the niche. And I think today I would maybe mention a couple of other drivers. One of them is general proliferation of technology devices and combination of that. So tablets, mobiles, smartphone devices, because I think same people like you and me, or already we're still young, but we've grown up, and in our regular lives we have all of these devices. But then you go on your construction site, and you're opening up, paper maps, and there is basically a big contrast with your normal life. And I think people, as the generations have started to change, people realize that you can utilize a lot more technology in construction in the same way as you do in some other spaces. And lastly, I think COVID in general, we're seeing that COVID has given a significant push with all the social distancing, contact tracing and other things. It has given definitely a push to how people are thinking about accessing construction sites, and working around that. On one hand, on the other hand, I think it has become also a very diversified industry. So if you think about the verticals, only in Israel there are probably about several hundred startups in the construction and property space in the last only couple of years that have been booming. And that includes, various property management software like Guesty, who has, raised series, B, C, and recently they announced a round led by Apex, raising a $50 million round, which we are super excited and happy to be, partners of such great investors. But there are very, various verticals that have appeared around project management, around planning, around financing, insurance, taking payments. So a lot of verticals. And I think this proliferation of various verticals gives birth to further, capabilities. So for example, Trustor, what they're doing is they are enabling essentially data collection at the construction site to ensure safety and productivity. So they actually have, certain hardware that they install on the site to track the devices, people, and also see, how the construction place is managed. And, they come on top of some other technology, which they have not developed necessarily themselves. But because of this whole technology stacks that appears, I think a lot more solutions are prone to appear. And that's what gets us very excited, because, this whole construction space is a huge market. And I think, we expect to see more coming out of that.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, as you're approaching and seeing a lot of a lot of companies in the seed stage and the Series A stage. What have you been starting to get either intuitively or really by the book that some red flags that you're observing? Some things that are popping out that perhaps somebody with less experience wouldn't necessarily think that it's such a big deal, but you're observing and saying, okay, there's something here that is touching a sensitive subject.
Yeah, I think for us as an investor, I think there's obviously no perfect hit. Sometimes you're seeing, but things which are catching the eye, for example, especially at early stages, is how good is the management team and how efficiently they've been building the company. So the ideal hit for an investor is that there is a company that is founded by relatively energetic people with a lot of charisma, which comprises, both product people, R&D people, and sales people. So that's like the ideal mix. If you can get all of that in one founding team, that's remarkable. And we're mostly talking about B2B products. And then I think usually these people they take some of their own money, some of the friends and family money, and then the ideal hit is that you take this little amount of capital and you get to a certain result. So you manage to build some product which tracks and start generating revenue. So that's the ideal scenario. Most of the times, of course, people take their own money, they spend it, it's not as successful, so they have to go back and take more money and maybe even more money. And that's when one of the first red flags starts to appear is that if people spend too much money, let's say they spent, I don't know, $10 million and they have revenue only of, I don't know, 20,000 per month, right? And we see situations like that.
and we're seeing it quite often today. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes we actually have been proven wrong a couple of times where people have actually spent a lot, but then and raised several rounds, and we passed on that situation because we were not as convinced, and the product was still But then they ended up actually becoming successful. So, and I think the team composition I think is also quite important because I think it's very important to have the right product guy. Who most of the time is the CEO, and then he himself is also the salesperson. So this combination of product and sales, and then there is a strong, technical co-founder. Sometimes teams are missing that, and I think that's. And lastly, I think one of the red flags is also how people have raised money before us, because sometimes they do cheap deals. So the founders, the initial investor, manages to get to a very sweet deal for himself, and then he tries to reprice this deal substantially, thus hurting the founders because the founders would get diluted, quite significantly between the initial round where they had to give away, let's say, 30% of the company, and then they need to get diluted another 20%, right? So that and you're still at post-seed stage, you're not Series A yet, right? And you already have given away 20%, half of your company, if not more. So this is having enough motivation for the management team. By the time the company starts having, let's say, 100,000 of revenue per month, it's important that the team is motivated enough to keep on going, because that's only the start of the journey. It might have taken them already 3, 4, 5 years to get even here, but they don't realize it's another 10 years from here at least, right? And that's, I think, is super important to make sure people are motivated. So we are looking, and then of course there are some other metrics around financials, operating KPIs, and how people think about the economics of their business. Because sometimes you see businesses that are scaling, they're starting to scale before they reach the point where they understand it's efficient, where lifetime value over customer acquisition cost is actually a meaningful number, and they produce value added to the whole environment and planet Earth by having their own product. Because a lot of times it's negative or very small, and then the question is, guys, you should just change something. You should turn over the page and move on, maybe.
Wow. And so as you're looking today at your journey, and you're looking at the work, and you have more $400 million under management, what really inspires you in your day to day right now?
Yeah, I think so. This is the number. I mean, we don't think a lot about the overall number and that we got somewhere. I think for us, it's about daily challenges. I think we we are a team, and together with Michael, initially, we believe that we ourselves, we like solving problems, right? So we're problem solvers, and we like being challenged. And every business, every company building, be it successful or not, it's solving problems on a daily basis. And we're not afraid of these problems, so we take them as a new, adventure, as step by step, and we go on and try to deal with them. I think the second thing besides that is I think technology attracts in general very talented and interesting people. I think that's probably one of the most exciting for us part of our job, because we work with very interesting investors or co-investors, people who have seen a lot and can share their experience. We work with a lot of founders, and it's a fast-paced environment, right? So unlike some other professions which are less fast-paced, this one is definitely fast-paced in terms of things happening. The results usually take very long, I think, versus investment banking, where I worked for a while, where you have a deal and you have an exit or an IPO. It's a 6-month process. Here in VC, an exit or an IPO, it's a 7-year process. So it's much longer paced. So the results, you actually need to be very patient to get to the result, not to make mistakes along the way, and make sure you actually arrive where you want to, where you're heading. So I think, and then I think also what inspires us a lot, specifically at Flashpoint, is our team. I think we were able to actually collect a tremendous team over the last, almost 9 years, and I'm very thankful for everyone who is around us. And it's not been easy at any point in time. But I think having people like that is truly inspiring, because they're supporting you, they're driving you, they're inspiring you. Some of these, and within our organization, we have people who joined us like very early, and they've become our partners. So people have grown, let's say, from analyst, associate level to become partners of the organization. And to me, it's truly inspiring as well to see how your own organization is building and developing. I think it's probably one of the also most exciting things that we're doing.
I love it. And if you had to describe your work or yourself in 3 words or so, what 3 words would you choose?
Yeah, it's not an easy one.
No.
Well, maybe I can. Maybe looking through the eyes of other people, I would try to describe myself. So I think. My mom probably thinks I'm curious. I'm a curious person. My wife probably thinks I'm a stubborn person. And my sons or my children, I think they think I'm a patient person. So that's probably how I can describe myself. I don't know.
I love it. Alex, thank you so much for your time. I love the fact that you're doubling down on the Israeli ecosystem. I didn't realize that prop tech and construction tech are such a big part of what's happening here. It's amazing that out of your investments, so many of them have been in Israel in the prop tech and construction tech space. And I think that one of the things that I'm still thinking about from what you said before about the red flags and the way that you're observing some opportunities is that it's not just the team, it's not just the product or the market. You have to also look at and understand financially what's been happening. Is the company setting itself up for success in the long run? And I think that that's obviously something that you only really learn to evaluate with time and with experience, which you obviously have. So Alex, thank you very much for the time and the inspiration, and stay safe and stay healthy.